What's going on, guys? Mason Roach here from Mason Sonar Services. I had originally planned to upload these to my website and make them available for purchase, but we decided we're going to keep them here on YouTube for free. So if you fish the Bayou City division or the Houston division, you can check out my YouTube channel 4 to 7 days before your event, and you'll see a tournament lake breakdown available for you. Before we get into the Sam Rayburn tournament lake breakdown, I just wanted to say if you're looking to get a fish finder installed or some on-the-water training to learn your electronics better, shoot me a call at 936-444-5849. I'm located here on Lake Conroe, and we can get you taken care of. All right, let's jump right into Sam Rayburn. So Sam Rayburn is an awesome fishery. It is very diverse, meaning that if you want to go catch them deep and you want to, stay offshore, you can do that. Or you can go burn the bank up and catch them up there as well. The only downfall to Sam Rayburn, in my opinion, is the amount of pressure it gets. It just seems like whether you go during the week, and you're thinking you're going to have the lake to yourself, you pull up and there's 50 bass boats all around you. So have that in mind this weekend, and know that just because you found a spot in practice, you might pull in there and there's 5 to 10 boats already fishing that area. So have multiple game plans in mind, multiple locations in mind, because you might have to do a little bit more bouncing around than you would like. That's the unfortunate part of this lake, but there's a ton of fish in it. You can always seem to catch fish doing something, so having multiple game plans is going to be very important. So let's talk about the kind of cover in Sam Rayburn. This place is very diverse, as I mentioned earlier, and what that means is that it really gives you a lot of options. You have standing timber, you got shallow hydrilla, you got some deeper hydrilla, you got hard spots, brush piles, rock piles. I mean, you name it, there's every type of cover that you could think of in Sam Rayburn. So what does that mean going into a tournament when you have that many different options? This can definitely be tough because it can make your mind spiral a little bit. You can be fishing out deep and thinking, well, what if this grass is better? What if the timber's better? It's really hard to fish and focus on one thing when you have that many options. So the best piece of advice I can give you is to fish your strengths. If you're a good deep fisherman, then spend a good amount of time in practice idling around drains, looking at brush piles, hard spots, and seeing where these fish are grouped up. Just like fish up shallow chase bait in the fall, fish do it offshore as well. At the end of this clip, I'll include a picture of side scan of what a big school of bass on Sam Rayburn look like. If fishing shallow is your strength, this is a great time of year to go up to the bank, fish the grass with some moving baits, and find those fish that are chasing shad. The fish up shallow this time of year are migrating to the backs of the pockets, the backs of creeks, so you can catch them at the front, the ones that are moving in, or you can go all the way to the back and catch the ones that have been there chasing shad. But this is a great time of year to fish deep or shallow, so pick your strengths and you'll find success. All right, let's dive into bait selection. So knowing that Sam Rayburn offers a lot of different ways to catch fish, we're gonna go over some offshore baits and some shallow water baits for this weekend. All right, so we're gonna kick it off with our offshore baits first. This here is a personal favorite of mine. Man, I love deep cranking. That is by far my favorite way to catch a bass. It always has been, and it works great in the fall. The reason this bait is so good this time of year is because it imitates shad. The fish offshore are real grouped up. They're in the drains, they're on those hard spots, and they're chasing bait. This here looks just like a shad. You can run this right through that school, and a lot of times it'll trigger a really big bite and catch numbers as well. So these next 3 baits I'm gonna mention are if they're not eating that crankbait offshore. There are some days they just get a little funky out there. No matter how fast you burn it through there or however you want to reel that crankbait, they just don't want it. So these baits are to kind of slow down and maybe pick those fish apart out of those schools and off those brush piles when they just don't want to quite eat that fast reaction bait. So the first 2 slow dragging baits that we're going to talk about are going to be a football jig and the Carolina rig. These are 2 very famous baits on Sam Rayburn. There has been many a bass caught on both of these. In the fall, I have a lot of success when I can't get fish to fire on a crankbait to eat this football jig. I like a green pumpkin color with just a crawl trailer on it, and I'm going to throw this on some heavier line. This is 17 pound. You can go all the way up to 20, just kind of depends how heavy of the cover you're fishing. The next one, Carolina rig. Man, this is just an awesome bait all times of year on Sam Rayburn. But if you can't get those fish to eat a crankbait or the football jig, sometimes this is just like the only thing they'll bite. This is a 1/2 ounce weight. I do throw some heavier line on this as well. I normally stick to 17 to sometimes 20, just like I said, depends how thick the cover is. And then bait of choice for me is normally like some sort of creature style bait or like a fluke. I really like a brush hog this time of year, just in green pumpkin, catches a lot of fish. So if you're struggling to get them to eat the crankbait, pick these two up, give them a shot, and you might find some success out there offshore. And last but not least, for the offshore fishing baits, we're going to talk about the dreaded drop shot. Unfortunately, there are some days that fishing is just brutal this time of year. There's not much you can do about it, but if you are going to stay offshore, you have to adapt. As fun as it is to set the hook on a big jig or catch them on a crankbait, sometimes this is your only option. This is just a green pumpkin drop shot worm with a 3/8 ounce weight. I like those on 10-pound line and just fish this really slow. Whether I'm fishing those schools of fish or I'm fishing brush piles, really let that soak in there, just kind of shake it a little bit. And like I said, there's some days that this is just about the only thing they'll eat out there. So it's not the most fun way to fish. Spinning rods aren't my favorite, but some days they get the job done. So now that we've went over our offshore fishing baits, we're gonna get into our shallow water ones. So we're gonna kick the shallow water baits off with a topwater. This here is a whopper plopper. I got some other examples of topwaters I would throw this time of year. This is just a white frog to throw up in that grass, buzz bait, and a head and spook. These are all great topwaters. I definitely recommend trying some of these different ones in practice and seeing which one you have the most success on. But that will be a player in the fall on Sam Rayburn. So the reason that I like a topwater so much in the fall is because it catches quality fish. I specifically like to start my mornings off throwing this time of year. And a lot of times I'm targeting, long points with some grass that come out on them. Just anywhere that those fish can really ambush bait. So one of the reasons I showed you so many different topwater baits was because it's all about the kind of grass you're fishing. If you're fishing real thick grass that's on top of the water, you're probably gonna have to throw something like this frog. If you're fishing a little bit deeper grass that's barely submerged under the water, something like this whopper plopper or even this head and spook will be a great bait of choice. So now we're gonna talk about some more shallow water baits. All right, so these two baits here kind of go hand in hand for me. This is a chatterbait and this is a swim jig. I feel like some days if those fish just don't really like that hard vibration of the chatterbait, that they'll eat the swim jig a little better. But a lot of times this bait here, you can rip it through the grass and produce a good reaction bite. All right, the next bait we're gonna talk about for shallow water bass fishing on Sam Rayburn is gonna be the Lipless Crankbait. I cannot tell you how many bass have been caught on Sam Rayburn on a Lipless Crankbait. It is always a player all times of year, and the reason for that is you can rip it through the hydrilla so well and create reaction strikes. This here is the Booyah One Knocker. It has a little bit different sound than a traditional rattle trap. The rattle trap has a lot of beads in it. This just has a couple and it's a little bit deeper of a knock. I really like this because it's a little bit different presentation than maybe the rest of the crowd that's fishing near me is throwing. And last but not least, we're gonna talk about the jerkbait. If you get out there and they're not eating the topwater good, they're slapping at the chatterbait, this can be a great way to make those sluggish fish bite. I hope this tournament leg breakdown helps you find some success on Sam Rayburn this weekend. Remember to fish your strengths and make sure you're around plenty of shad. Please like and subscribe to help continue to grow this channel, and good luck everyone.